Matilda by Roald Dahl. In the interval, Miss Honey left the classroom and headed straight for the headmistress' study. She felt widely excited. She had just met a small girl who possessed, or so it seemed to her, quite extraordinary qualities of brilliance. There had not been time yet to find out exactly how brilliant a child was, but Miss Honey had learned enough to realize that something had to be done about it as soon as possible. It would be ridiculous to leave a child like that stuck in the bottom form. Normally, Miss Honey was terrified of the headmistress and kept well away from her, but at this moment she felt ready to take on anybody. She knocked on the door of the dreaded private study. "Enter," boomed the deep and dangerous voice of Miss Trunchbull. Miss Honey went in. Now most head teachers are chosen because they possess a number of fine qualities. They understand children and they have children's best interests at heart. They are sympathetic, they are fair, and they are deeply interested in education. Miss Trunchbull possessed none of this quality, and how she ever got her present job was a mystery. She was above all most formidable female. She had once been a famous athlete, and even now the muscles were still clearly in evidence. You could see them in the bull neck, in the big shoulder, in the thick arms, in the sinewy wrist, and in powerful legs. Looking at her, you got the feeling that this was someone who would bend iron bar and tear telephone directories in half. Her face, I am afraid, was neither a thing of beauty nor joy forever. She had an obstinate chin, a cruel mouth, and small, arrogant eye, and as far for her clothes, they were, to say the least, extremely odd. She always had on a brown cotton smock which was pinched in around the waist, with a white leather belt. The belt was fastened in front with an enormous silver buckle. The massive thighs which emerged from out the smock were encased in a pair of extraordinary breeches, bottle green in color and made of coarse twigs. These breeches reached to just below the knees, and from there on down she sported green stocking with turn-up tops which display her calf muscles to perfection, and her feet she wore flat-heeled brogues with leather flaps. She looked, in short, more like an rather eccentric and bloodthirsty follower of stag hounds than the headmistress of a nice school for children. When Miss Honey entered the study, Miss Trunchbull was standing beside her. He was stuck with the look of scowling impatience on her. "Yes, Miss Honey," she said. "What is it you want? You are looking very flushed and flustered this morning. What's the matter with you? Have those little stinker been flicking spitball at you?" "No, headmistress, nothing like that." "Well, what is then? Get on with it. I am a busy woman." As she spoke, she reached out and poured herself a glass of water from a jug that was always on her desk. "There is a little girl in my class called Matilda Wormwood," Miss Honey began. "That's the daughter of the man who owns Wormwood Motor in the village." Miss Trunchbull barked. She hardly ever spoke in a normal voice. She either barked or shouted. "An excellent person, Wormwood," she went on. "I was in there only yesterday. He sold me a car almost new. Only then 10,000 mile previous owner was an old lady who took it out once a year at the most. A terrific bargain. Yes, I like Wormwood, a real pillar of our society. He had told me the daughter was a bad lot though. He had said to watch her. He said if anything bad ever happened in the school, it was certain to be his daughter who did it. I haven't met the little brat yet, but she will know about it when I do. Her father says she's a real brat." "Oh no, headmistress, that can't be right," Miss Honey cried. "Oh yes, Miss Honey, it darn well is right. In fact, now I come to think of it, I will bet it was she who put the sticky bomb under my desk here. First thing this morning, the place stank like a sewer. Of course it was her. I shall have her for that. You see, if I don't, what she look like? Nasty little worm? I will be bound. I have discovered, Miss Honey, during my long career as a teacher, that a bad girl is far more dangerous creature than a bad boy. What's more, they're much harder to squash. Squashing a bad girl is like trying to squash a blue bottle. You bang down on it, and the darn thing isn't there. Nasty, dirty thing, little girl. Ah, glad I never was one. Oh, but you must have been a little girl once, headmistress. Surely you were. Not for long anyway. Miss Trunchbull barked, grinning. I became a woman very quickly. She completely off her rocker. Miss Honey told herself. She is balmy as a bedbug. Miss Honey stood resolutely before the headmistress, who when she was not going to be browbeaten. I must tell you, mistress, she said, that you are completely mistaken about Matilda putting a stinky bomb under your desk. I'm never mistaken, Miss Honey. But headmistress, the child only arrived in school this morning and came straight to the classroom. Don't argue with me, for heaven's sake, woman. This little brute, Matilda, or whatever her name is, has stink bombed my study. There is no doubt about it. Thank you for suggesting it. But I didn't suggest it, headmistress. Of course you did. Now what is it you want, Miss Honey? Why are you wasting my time? I came to you to talk about Matilda, headmistress. I have extraordinary thing to report about the child. May I please tell you what happened in class just now? I suppose she set fire to your skirts and scorched your knickers, Miss Trunchbull nodded. Oh no, Miss Honey cried out. Matilda is a genius. At the mention of this word, Miss Trunchbull's face turned purple, and her whole body seemed to swell up like bullfrog. A genius, she shouted. What a piffle is this you are talking, madam? You must be out of your mind. I heard her father word for it that child is a gangster. Her father is wrong, headmistress. Don't be twelve, Miss Honey. You haven't you have met the little beast for only half an hour, and her father has known her all her life. But Miss Honey was determined to have her say. She now began to describe some of the amazing things Matilda had done with arithmetic. So she's learned a few tables by heart, has she? Miss Trunchbull bowed. My dear woman, that doesn't make her genius, it makes her parrot. But headmistress, she can read. So can I, Miss Trunchbull snapped. It is my opinion, Miss Honey said, that Matilda should be taken out of my form and placed immediately in the top form of with 11-year-old. Ha! Snorted Miss Trunchbull. So you want to get rid of her, do you? So you can't handle her? So now you want to unload her onto the wretch Miss Plimsoll in the top form, where she will cause even more chaos? Oh no, cried Miss Honey. This is not reason at all. Oh yes, it is, shouted Trunchbull. I can see through your little plot, madam, and my answer is no. Matilda said where she is, and it is up to you to see what she be herself. But headmistress, please, not another word, shouted Miss Trunchbull. And in any case, I have a rule in this school that all children remain in their own age group regardless of ability. Great Scott, I am not having a little 5-year-old brigand sitting with senior girls and boys in the top form. Whoever heard of such a thing? Miss Honey stood there helpless before this great red-necked giant. There was a lot more she would like to have said, but she knew it was useless. She said softly, very well then, it's up to you, headmistress. You're darn right it up to me, Miss Trunchbull below. And don't forget, madam, that we are dealing here with a little viper who put a stink bomb under my desk. She did not do that, headmistress. Of course she did it. Miss Trunchbull boomed, and I will tell you that. I wish to heaven I will allow to use the birch and the bell as I did in the good old days. I have roasted Matilda bottom for her so she couldn't sit down for a month. Miss Honey turned and walked out of the study feeling depressed but by no means defeated. I'm going to do something about this child, she told herself. I don't know what I will be, but I shall find a way to help her in the end. The parent. When Miss Honey emerged from the headmistress' study, most of the children were outside in the playground. Her first move was to go round to the various teachers who taught the senior class and borrow from them a number of textbooks on algebra, geometry, French, English literature, and the like. Then she sought out Matilda and called her into the classroom. There is no point, she said, in you sitting in class doing nothing while I am teaching the rest of the form the two timetable and how to spell cat, rat, mouse. So during each lesson I shall give you one of the textbook to study. At the end of the lesson, you can come up to me with your questions if you have any, and I shall try to help you. How does that sound? Thank you, Miss Honey, Matilda said. That sounds fine. I'm sure, Miss Honey said, that we will be able to get you moved into much higher forms later on, but for the moment the headmistress wishes you to stay where you are. Very well, Miss Honey, Matilda said. Thank you so much for getting those books for me. What a nice child she is, Miss Honey thought. I don't care what her father said about her. She seems very quiet and gentle to me, and not a bit stick up in spite of her brilliance. In fact, hardly seem aware of it. So when the class reassembled, Matilda went to her desk and began to study textbooks on geometry which Miss Honey had given her. The teacher kept half an eye on her all the time, and I noticed that the child very soon became deeply absorbed in the book. She never glanced up once during the entire lesson. Miss Honey, meanwhile, was making another decision. She was deciding that she would go herself and have a secret talk with Matilda's mother and father as soon as possible. She simply refused to let the matter rest where it was. The whole thing was ridiculous. She couldn't believe that the parents were totally unaware of their daughter's remarkable talent. After all, Mr. Wormwood was a successful motor car dealer, so she presumed that he was a fairly intelligent man himself. In any event, parents never underestimate the ability of their own children, quite the reverse. Sometimes it was well nigh impossible for teacher to convince a proud father or mother that their beloved offspring was complete nitwit. Miss Honey felt confident that she would have no difficulty in convincing Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood that Matilda has something very special indeed. The trouble was going to be stop them from getting over enthusiastic, and now Miss Honey hopes began to expand even further. She started wondering whether permission might not be sought from the parents for her to give private tuition to Matilda after school. The prospect of coaching a child as bright as this appealed enormously to her professional instinct as a teacher, and suddenly she decided that she would go and call on Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood that very evening. She would go fairly late, between 9 and 10 o'clock, when Matilda was sure to be in bed, and that is precisely that she did. Having got the address from the school record, Miss Honey set out to walk with her own home to the Wormwood's house shortly after 9. She found the house in a pleasant street, where each smallish building was separated from its neighbor by a bit of garden. It was a modern brick house that could not have been cheap to buy, and name on the gate said Cozy Nook. Cozy Nosy Cook might have been better, Miss Honey thought. She was given to playing with words in that way. She walked up the path and rang the bell, and while she stood waiting, she could hear the television blaring inside. The door was opened by a small, ratty-looking man with a thin, ratty mustache, who was wearing a sport coat that had orange-red strips in the material. Yes, he said, peering out at Miss Honey. If you are selling raffle tickets, I don't want any. I am not, Miss Honey said, and please forgive me for butting in on you like this. I am Matilda's teacher at school, and it is important I have a word with you and your wife. Got into trouble already, has she? Mr. Wormwood said, blocking the doorway. Well, she is your responsibility from now on. You will have to deal with her. She is in no trouble at all, Miss Honey said. I have come with good news about her. Quite startling news, Mr. Wormwood. Do you think I might come in for a few minutes and talk to you about Matilda? We are right in the middle of watching one of our favorite programs, Mr. Wormwood said. This is most inconvenient. Why don't you come back some other time? Miss Honey began to lose patience. Mr. Wormwood, she said, if you think some rotten TV program is more important than your daughter's future, then you ought not to be a parent. Why don't you switch the darn thing off and listen to me? That should Mr. Wormwood. He was not used to being spoken to in this way. He pawed carefully at the slim, frank woman who stood so resolutely out on the porch. Of very well then, he snapped, come on in and let's get over it with. Miss Honey stepped briskly inside. Mrs. Wormwood isn't going to thank you for this, the man said, as he held her into the sitting room where a large platinum blonde woman was glaring rapturously at the TV screen. Who is it? The woman said, not looking around. Some school teacher, Mr. Wormwood said. She says she got to talk to us about Matilda. He crossed to the TV set and turned down the sound, but left the picture on the screen. Don't do that, Harry, Miss Wormwood cried out. Willard is just about to propose to Angelica. You can still watch it while we are talking. Mr. Wormwood said, that is Matilda, teacher. She said she got some sort of news to give us. My name is Jennifer Honey, Miss Honey said. How do you do, Miss Wormwood? Mrs. Wormwood glared at her, said, what's the trouble then? Nobody invited Miss Honey to sit down, so she chose a chair and sat down anywhere. This, she said, was your daughter's first day at school. We know that, Mrs. Wormwood said, ratty about missing her program. Is that all you came to tell us? Miss Honey stared hard into the other woman's wet grey eye, and she allowed the silence to hang in the air until Mrs. Wormwood became uncomfortable. Do you wish me to explain why I came? She said. Get on with it then, Mrs. Wormwood said. I'm sure you know, Miss Honey said, that children in the bottom class at school are not expected to be able to read or spell or juggle with numbers then when they first arrive. 5-year-old cannot do that, but Matilda can do it all, and if I am to believe her, I wouldn't, Mrs. Wormwood said. She was still ratty at losing the sound of the TV. Was she lying then? Miss Honey said. When she told me that nobody taught her to multiply her or to read. Did either of you teach her? Teach her what? Mr. Wormwood said. To read books. Miss Honey said. Perhaps you did teach her. Perhaps she was lying. Perhaps you have shelves full of books all over the house. I wouldn't know. Perhaps you have both great readers. Of course we read, Mr. Wormwood said. Don't be so daft. I read the autocar and the motor from cover to cover every week. This child has already read an astonishing number of books, Miss Honey said. I was simply trying to find out if she came from a family that loved good literature. We don't hold with book reading, Mr. Wormwood said. You can't make a living from sitting on your fanny and reading storybooks. We don't keep them in the house. I see, Miss Honey said. Well, I came to tell you was that Matilda has a brilliant mind. But I expect you to knew that already. Of course I knew she could read, Mother said. She spent her life up in her room, buried in some silly books. But does it not intrigue you, Miss Honey said, that a little 5-year-old child is reading long adult novels by Dickens and Hemingway? Doesn't that make you jump up and down the excitement? Not particularly, the mother said. I'm not in favor of blue stocking girls. A girl should think about making herself look attractive. so she can get a good husband later on. Look is more important than books, Miss Hunky. The name is Honey, Miss Honey said. Now look at me, Mr. Wormwood said. Then look at you. You choose book. I choose look. Miss Honey looked at the plain, plump person with the smug, sweet, pudding face who was sitting across the room. What did you say? She asked. I said you choose book and I choose look, Mrs. Wormwood said. And who finished up the better off? Me, of course. I'm sitting pretty in a nice house with successful businessmen. And you left slaving away, teaching a lot of nasty little children the ABC. Quite right, Sugar Plum, Mr. Wormwood said, casting a look of such simpering sloppiness at his wife it would have made a cat sick. Miss Honey decided that if she was going to get anywhere with these people, she must not lose her temper. I haven't told you all of it yet, she said. Matilda, so far as I can gather at the early stage, is also a kind of mathematical genius. She can multiply complicated figures in her head like lightning. What's that point of that when you can buy a calculator? Mr. Wormwood said. A girl doesn't get a man by being brainy, Mrs. Wormwood said. Look at that film star, for instance, she added, pointing at the silent TV screen where a bossomy female was being embraced by a tragic actor in the moonlight. You don't think she got him to do that by multiplying figure at him, do you? That likely, and now he is going to marry her. You see, if he doesn't, and she going to live in a mansion with a butler and lots of maids. Miss Honey could hardly believe that she was hearing. She had heard that parents like this existed all over the place and that their children turn out to be delinquent and drop out, but it was still a shock to meet a pair of them in the flesh. Matilda trouble, she said, trying once again, is that she is so far ahead of everyone else around her that it might be worth thinking about some extra kind of private tuition. I seriously believe that she could be brought up to university standard in 2 or 3 years with proper coaching. University? Mr. Wormwood shouted, bouncing up in his chair. Who want to go to university for heaven's sake? All they learn there is a bad habit. That is not true, Miss Honey said. If you had a heart attack this minute and had to call a doctor, that doctor would be university graduate. If you got to sued for selling someone a rotten second-hand car, you have to get a lawyer, and he be university graduate too. Do not despise clever people, Mr. Wormwood, but I can see you are not going to agree. I'm sorry I burst in on you like this. Miss Honey rose from her chair, walked out of the room. Mr. Wormwood followed her to the front door and said, Good of you to come, Miss Hawkins, or is it Miss Harris? It's neither, Miss Honey said, but let it go. And away she went.